What's important is that you are showing you have a plan, and when there is a plan, it is much more likely it will happen. So don't feel nervous about committing.
Hi, it's great to welcome Hatty Fawcett from Focused Business to this video. Today we're going to cover forecast models. So Hatty is going to cover what a forecast model should look like from an investor's point of view, how investors will judge a forecast model, and I will cover how HMRC, for advanced assurance purposes, for SEIS and EIS, will judge a forecast model as well. So Hatty, lovely to have you here. Are you okay to introduce yourself and Focus for Business?
I'd love to, and it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I'm Hatty Fawcett. I'm the founder of Focus for Business. And to give you a little bit of context for what we do, Focus for Business is designed to make it faster and fairer for founders to raise their first or second equity funding round. The reason I do this is because there's a lot that gets in the way, whether it's gender. The statistics for female founders raising investment are appalling. Less than 2% of VC funding goes to female founders. If you're an ethnically diverse founder, it's even worse. The stats are really stacked against you. And if your business happens to be outside of London, that makes it harder for you to raise investment too. These are stupid reasons for not backing a startup. So Focus for Business is designed to level the playing field, make it quicker and easier to raise funding. And our funding accelerator is designed to get you equity investment in 90 days.
Amazing. Thanks, Hatty. And yeah, share your passion for enabling diverse founders to have the same opportunities as every other founder. It's amazing. So by way of intro for me, I'm Sam Simpson, one of the co-founders of FounderCatalyst. We do a few things. So we help people get SEIS, EIS, advanced assurance from HMRC. We do legal funding round paperwork, and we make introductions between our customers and potential sources of funding. So let's get into the detail. Hatty, can you tell us very briefly, well, not briefly maybe, how an investor will judge a forecast model, what kind of things they'll look at, and the process they'll go through evaluating that model?
Yeah, absolutely. I almost want to take a step back and go, why do you need a forecast? Because I saw a horrendous statistic the other day that at least 25% of founders are trying to raise investment without a forecast. And that really is a hiding to nothing. A forecast is an essential part of your investor toolkit. You're in your toolkit, you're also going to have a pitch deck, but you need the forecast as well. The pitch deck, if you like, is your vision for growth. It tells the big story, the way you see your business going, why you need your business to deliver. Whereas a forecast brings that vision to life in numbers, hard, factual numbers. And it's using metrics and evidential numbers from your past activity to build a vision of the future. But it's doing it month by month, week by week, in numbers. Now, some founders get really nervous around numbers. I know I do. I'm dyslexic. Numbers are not my strong point. But when I was raising investment for my business, the forecast became an instrumental and game-changing tool for me. Like I say, I'm not good with numbers, but with a really strong forecast template, which we now use on our funding accelerator and we give to everyone on our funding accelerator, it becomes really easy because the forecasting template prompts you on the numbers you need to put in. And it allows you to look at historic data and go, okay, here's some of the numbers that I've done in the past, and put them into your forecast to make a vision of how your business grows over time. Maybe it would be easier for me to explain a forecast by actually showing an example. So what you've got on the screen here is an example, a snapshot actually, from the financial forecast template we use on Funding Accelerator. And as I was saying, we give this to all of the founders on our program, and we also pair them with a forecasting mentor who works with them on a one-to-one basis to make their forecast as strong as it can be and to challenge it in the way that investors will, so that you've got confidence in answering questions around your forecast. That's where you want to get to. But let's look at the detail. What does a forecast need? The first thing an investor is going to be looking for is that your forecast shows how the business grows into the future. And usually an investor is looking to see either a 3 or a 5-year financial forecast. What makes you decide whether it's 3-year or 5-year is usually about the speed of growth of your business. How quickly are you getting to profit? How quickly can you demonstrate a nice, a hockey stick curve, maybe, but at least a decent growth curve. For some businesses, that can be done very quickly, say in 3 years. For other businesses, it may take you a bit longer, and that's when you might choose to use a 5-year forecast. So you want to pick your time frame based on how quickly you get to profit and how quickly your business, your growth curve grows effectively. Then you want to think about the story of growth. So in the forecast template we use, we have a tab that lists month by month and year by year across the top all how your business projects into the future. And then down the side of the forecast, we've got all the costs that are associated with driving revenue in your business. And then the top bit of the forecast will actually predict the revenue, will show how it grows month by month. And then underneath that, we'll have the costs that are driving that growth. So you might have your marketing costs. You'll certainly have technology costs if you've got a SaaS business, for example, and you'll have staff costs as well. But you're predicting those costs month by month. And I said that for me, using a financial forecast gave me a eureka moment with my business. And it was this page in the spreadsheet that did that, because it allowed me to think, well, what are we going to do each month? And what activity is that going to drive in the business? And what revenue will come from that? And we plotted that into the spreadsheet month by month by month. And then you have another sheet that gathers all that information up and shows it as an overview, shows you the headlines. So this means by the end of year 1, we're looking at this revenue, these costs, and this profit. Then year 2, it's this, year 3, it's that. And suddenly the story of your business becomes really easy to talk about because the numbers are there in front of you. There's 3 key sheets an investor's going to look at. One is called a profit and loss, and that's kind of that summary sheet that really shows the headlines of how the business grows. There'll be a balance sheet and there'll be a cash flow. The cash flow was the other sheet that I found really instrumental because it shows the money coming in, but also the money coming out of your business month by month, year by year. And it allows you to see, in our template, it goes red and screams at you. It allows you to see when the cash runs out in the bank. And that's how you start to work out, well, how much money do I need to raise? And when do I need to raise it? Ideally, you want to be raising investment before you get that little red cell screaming at you that you run out of money. So you want to start 3 or 6 months before the cash runs out. But it also allows you to show an investor why you need to raise the amount you say you need to raise. It shows how the cash needs to come, when the cash needs to come into the business. But that sheet that shows what you're doing, what activities you're doing each month, also shows how you're going to use the money to drive revenue and ultimately profit in your business. So it makes it really easy to talk about numbers, even if you're not very confident with numbers like me. The other slide, I think, or the sheet, that's really important in your forecast is the team sheet or the salary sheet. And here you will list all the people that you've got in the business now, but also all the people you plan to introduce into the business as your business grows. So you may be a very tight team at the moment. It may be you and a co-founder and an intern or whatever. But as your business grows, you recognize you might need to bring in a marketing person, or you may need to bring your technology in-house if you're currently subcontracting it. And these lines go into the salary forecast, the salary sheet, to show an investor who you're going to bring into the business, what that's going to cost, and at what stage you're going to bring them in. You don't want everybody on day 1, but you might need everybody by year 3. So again, that's a really important sheet. And what this financial forecast allows you to do is to show the investor what your plan is for the business and how your business is going to grow month by month, week by week. There was one other thing I thought it would be worth us talking about, Sam, and that's some of the key metrics that an investor looks at when they look at your forecast. So they're going to get this overview of the pattern of growth over 3 years by looking at the forecast. but they also drill down into some of the numbers. And there's two numbers in particular that I thought it would be worth us talking about further. One is about how much you spend to get a customer. Investors call this your CAC, your customer acquisition cost. And it literally is, how much money do you spend to gain one new customer? I track this in my business, and I track all my marketing expenditure every month. And then I also track how many new customers do I get each month. And I divide one into the other. And that gives me my CAC, my customer acquisition cost. And I track it over time. And, some months my CAC goes through the roof because I've run a big marketing campaign. And other months it may be much more steady. And so you're probably looking at averaging your CAC over a period of time, 3 or 6 months, rather than just taking 1 month's data. But it's a figure that investors will look at. Alongside that, they're going to look at the the customer lifetime value, the CLV, customer lifetime value. Now, what that means is slightly confusing. You might think lifetime value means the life of a human being. It doesn't. It means the length of time that one of your customers engages with your business. It may be that a customer starts working with your business and stays with you for 5 years. Other businesses, it may be a shorter period or a longer period. Every business is slightly different. But you need to track how long does a customer continue to use your business or service or product, and then over that period of time, how much do they spend with you? That is their lifetime value. And what an investor is looking at, right, they're going, okay, so your CAC is this, £5 for the sake of argument, and over the lifetime of their journey with you, a customer spends £100. Well, that's great, the numbers work. You spend 5 to get 100, and so at scale, this business is going to be a nice little earner. Thank you very much. Sometimes your numbers don't work like that. I had one client who was spending £200 to get one customer, and the customer only spent £150 with the business. So the numbers didn't look like they work. You spend £200 to get £150. I'm not going to invest in that, are you? But there was a saving grace here, which is sometimes called the marketing coefficient. And what that shows is that every customer who became a customer of this business introduced 2 other customers for free. And they also spent £150. So if effectively in this scenario, the business was paying £200, but they were getting 3 customers who each spent £150. So the numbers did work once you put in the marketing coefficient. So that's why you need a forecast, okay? It allows the investor to see the overview of your business and how the business grows over time, how the revenue grows, how the costs grow, and ultimately how the profit grows. It allows an investor to see how you're going to build your team. It allows an investor to see when the cash might run out and you might need to raise more money. And it allows an investor to see those key metrics: customer acquisition cost, customer lifetime value, and if you need it, the marketing coefficient. Final thing I was going to say, Sam, is how instrumental this forecast can be. We had one graduate from the Funding Accelerator, a company called Pequel, the UK's first female urinal, and Hazel and Amber, who were the co-founders of that business, came and did the Funding Accelerator at a point where they had been having meetings with investors and seemingly getting interest from investors. But after the first pitch, the conversation dried up and they felt they were being ghosted by investors. The investors never came back to them despite being chased. They joined the Funding Accelerator and we looked at what was causing this, what was missing, why weren't investors talking to this really strong startup. And when we looked at the forecast, we realized that was the issue. They didn't have sufficient detail. It was too top line. It didn't show the business growing over time. It didn't show the team building out. So Hazel and Amber took the forecast that we use on the Funding Accelerator, built that out with the support of our forecasting mentors. And they turned up to the end of Sprint 2 of Funding Accelerator, which is 8 weeks into the program, saying, we're here to pitch, but actually we don't need your investment. They had secured the British Designs Fund as the leading investor in their business. And they had backed them purely and simply on the basis of their financial forecast. They said it was the most detailed, the most thorough they'd ever seen. And it was so clear, the plan for growing the business, that they were in. They were backing Hazel and Amber. And having got British Design Fund as a lead investor, they then picked up Tom, the founder of Monzo Bank, to complete the round. So that was a really positive experience, and shows very clearly to me how a forecast really matters. You can't raise investment without one.
That's a really great case study to end that section on. I think, yeah, that's really powerful. And it's funny, as an investor, I see, the usual selection of documents for a funding round, and quite often it's the forecast that's neglected. People spend a huge amount of time producing a really pretty pitch deck with 100 slides and every question that could be answered.
Beautifully graphically designed.
Yeah, and I think and the forecast gets neglected, and actually it kind of lags behind the other documentation. I guess to draw on a couple of other, I'm astounded that 25% of founders try raising without a forecast. I mean, it is, as an investor, that feels ridiculous. And then to recap, I know you and I are on the same page, Hattie, but the 4 fundamentals you need before you even think of starting a funding round: pitch deck, forecast, advance assurance, term sheet. And if you've got those 4 things on hand, then an investor's going to think, great, you're prepared and you're ready to go. If you're missing any one of those, to my mind as an investor, it's just not a great look, because you just don't look like you're ready for a funding round. It doesn't look like you're taking it seriously.
You're not serious, are you? You're signaling you're not serious about raising investment, and there are plenty of founders out there who are. So why wouldn't an investor go and talk to them?
And also, I mean, we're coming on to now talk about HMRC and the advance assurance process and how the forecast fits in with that. But you can't apply for advance. Well, you can apply, you'll get rejected, but you can't get advance assurance without having a forecast that brings to life the things I'll talk about in a minute. So fascinating. The other point that you made that really resonates with me, quite often I see forecast models for 3 or even 5 years, and it might be a deep tech business that needs to do some very hardcore R&D for 4 or 5 years, and they may start getting some revenue but not be profitable to year 8 or whatever, and the forecast model stops. And an investor needs to understand a positive future rather than making a loss. Making a loss all the way through a forecast it's just uninvestable. So your horizon for the forecast needs to be appropriate to the nature of the business, as you said earlier. And it's quite often, it's common to the first 3 years of a forecast are quite detailed, because you know what your costs will be, ideally what your revenue will be. But as you get to year 4 onwards, you might choose to do yearly rather than monthly at that point, and consolidate it. But you can't just stop. If you're not profitable until year 7, for example, you can't just stop in year 5, because your business just looks uninvestable. Yeah, it's just uninvestable at that point. So moving on now, what I wanted to talk about is how HMRC judge a forecast model and the things you need to bring to life in your forecast model to stand you a really good chance of getting through the advance assurance process without question. We've got an embarrassingly simple forecast model that we offer at FounderCatalyst. It's on our free stuff page, and we'll put a link in the comments. It is nowhere near as sophisticated as Hattie's model, I'm afraid. But the reason I love it, it is the minimum viable product to get through the HMRC process. So if you follow the guidance we're going to give today and you use that model, we've never once had a single query on the model. So we know it's 100% HMRC compatible. As an investor, it needs more work. It doesn't cover the lifetime value or the customer acquisition costs and those kind of things. It's not that sophisticated, but it is certainly good enough to get you through the advance assurance process. So what do you want to say on the forecast model? The first thing to say is, and this sounds straightforward, but it's amazing the number of people that get this point wrong. The forecast model needs to reflect how the business will look once you take on funding. So it should be both. It should show the investment incoming, but also how you will spend the investment. Quite a few people do a forecast model based on getting no investment, which isn't the point of an investment-based forecast model. And it needs to do that, otherwise it will be straight rejected by HMRC for reasons we'll cover in a minute. The second point is you need to justify your raise. So your forecast model needs to demonstrate why you need the money in your business. So a really easy test of this, on one of the lines in the spreadsheet, you will have a line showing the incoming cash and the investment SEIS or EIS money. If you delete the numbers in those cells or cell, then you should have a minus number. So as Hatty said, your forecast model needs a cash flow, and your cash flow should dip below zero, probably to the extent that you're funding round. So if you're raising 250, somewhere on the spreadsheet, your cash flow should hit somewhere like minus 250. If you don't do that, then HMRC quite often challenge if you don't do that, because you're not demonstrating you need to undertake the funding round in order to achieve your goals. To give a silly example, if you're cash flow positive from day one, the 250,000 goes in the bank, and through the model, you make $1 million profit in the first year, and your cash flow would never have dipped below zero anyway. HMRC will just reject your application because you're not demonstrating why you need the cash. So that's really, really important. We've mentioned already the other document we won't talk any more about today is the pitch deck, but your forecast needs to reconcile back to the pitch deck. So everybody has a graph in the pitch deck showing, revenue, number of customers potentially in EBIT, and those numbers need to reconcile back to the forecast model. Sounds really straightforward to say, but it's amazing the number of people who are tweaking one or other of the documents and they become decoupled. The key other part of the pitch deck that the forecast needs to reconcile to is the use of funds. So within the pitch deck, this is mandatory for HMRC. You need to demonstrate how you're going to spend the 250,000 or whatever you are raising. The normal way to do that is a pie chart. 2 segments won't cut it, by the way. You can't say marketing and staff, that won't do. You should probably break it into 5 or 6 segments showing how that 250 is going to get broken down. And again, that needs to reconcile back to the forecast model. We've seen HMRC raise a challenge where the forecast model sets a very different spend profile to what's on that pie chart in the pitch deck. So they do check between those 2 documents, and they do need to be internally consistent between the 2. As Hatty said, it's really usual to do either 3 or 5 year forecasts. For HMRC purposes, the absolute minimum is 3 years, so you can't get away with any less than that. And it should be roughly from the date you're going to start your funding round. So if I were doing a forecast now, it's okay to do 3 years as of the 1st of October, for example. Technically, now most of your investors will ask for this, but HMRC aren't that fussed. So you don't need to do a month-by-month model for the purpose of HMRC. You can do a consolidated forecast model just year by year for 3 years. Most of the models I've seen, virtually everyone you can download free off the internet, do month by month, and your investors are absolutely going to be asking for that anyway. But technically, for HMRC, you can consolidate into kind of year by year. The models that fly through HMRC are based on a very standard, this is your revenue, this is your cost of sale, these are your overheads, this is the incoming investment, and this is the cash flow. So following a really standard the kind of thing that an accountant would produce. Sometimes you've got your own internal models which layer on different unit economics and the scaling of that, and maybe different products. What's best is to put those on another tab and then link those through to a summary tab, which produces the standard P&L format that HMRC will expect. We do see the few times we see the forecast model challenge, it's quite often because there are 30 odd tabs on a spreadsheet and HMRC just can't navigate their way around it. So there is, our forecast model is probably somewhat oversimplified for investors, but you can overcomplicate it and have 30 tabs. And then you get HMRC querying saying, we just don't understand it. Can you bring to life these points? Which nobody wants a query on an advance assurance application. The one thing that HMRC will also look for are your sources of revenue. So HMRC, there are, excluded trades. There are things you're not allowed to do with under SEIS and EIS. And so you need to demonstrate how you're going to earn money to prove that you've got a qualifying trade. And if you've got multiple sources of revenue, so you may earn via advertising and product sales and sponsorship or subscriptions, whatever it has to be, a different line for every source of revenue is really useful, and a match line for the cost of sales associated with those different revenue lines as well. Investors are going to ask that anyway. If you've got multiple sources of revenue, then that's a fairly standard thing for investors to expect to see. Also, you need to be really careful when showing your costs, whether that's direct cost of sale or overheads. We quite often see queries where, if you're raising £250,000 and you've got a pie chart saying, right, we're going to spend all £250,000 with an external provider who's going to do our development work. That's a massive no-no for HMRC. They want to see a few things. They want to see capital's really at risk. If you're outsourcing development on a fixed price basis, capital's not at risk because you're guaranteed an outcome. So you really need to demonstrate that lots of the money is going towards, going to be used internally to recruit staff, to pay for marketing, to do development using in-house capability. It's okay, if you're raising 250, it would be okay to say 50,000 or 70,000 is being spent with an external provider. But if the majority of the money you're raising is being spent externally, that will almost certainly be queried by HMRC. So the final thing I wanted to bring to life is around demonstrating that you're a genuine growth company, which is one of the final tests from HMRC. And you need to demonstrate that you are growing via some metric. If you're raising £250,000 and your revenue doesn't grow, you're not employing anybody else, and your customer count doesn't grow, that's not a great look, and you will be queried and probably rejected. So you need to demonstrate you are growing via some metric, and it's easiest and it's most common for a startup to grow via all of those. You want to grow revenue over time. Your investors will hope for that anyway. You'll grow headcount and also the number of customers. So demonstrating all three in your model is standard and typical for a startup, but you need to demonstrate at least one of those, or otherwise, you won't be deemed a genuine growth company. And there will be challenges. So if you manage to tick all of those boxes, and there's a lot to digest there, but if you manage to tick all of those boxes, if you use a forecast model that's compatible, and we know, we've worked with Hatty on lots of advanced assurance submissions, and we've never once had a query on your models, Hatty, which is great, or you use our MVP forecast model, link in the comments, then you're almost certainly going to pass the HMRC process. Hatty, I didn't know if you had any final thoughts on the forecast model you wanted to bring to life to close.
I think the only thing I would say is people often worry about it's all made up. How do I know this is actually going to happen? And truth is you don't. And truth is it doesn't matter. What you are doing is you are laying down a plan of how you believe it can happen. And having a plan makes it more likely that it will happen than not having a plan. So don't feel, a lot of people are so nervous about committing a number to paper. Don't worry. Investors know that it could change. HMRC know it could change. What's important is that you are showing you have a plan, and when there is a plan, it is much more likely it will happen. So don't feel nervous about committing.
That is so true. And as you say, every investor and HMRC know that as soon as you submit the forecast, it's out of date, it's probably wrong. You may have been optimistic on, founders are typically optimistic on, they're going to get revenue early, the revenue will increase, the cost will be lower. And as with, developing anything, things always take longer, it's always more expensive, but that's to be expected. And as an investor, actually what I'm doing when I'm reading a forecast, I take it with a pinch of salt based upon the caveats we've just said, but it's following the thought process that a founder's gone through to come up with the numbers. And also, checking for the obvious, if I spot somebody's, they're doubling revenue every year based upon a formula, that's probably not going to happen. It's probably massively optimistic. So it's just testing the thought process and how realistic that thought process is as well. Amazing. Thanks for your insights, Hatty. It's great to talk today.
Always a pleasure to talk with you, Sam. It's great.